Hey folks, in this lesson we are going to be looking at the structure of the Python language in just a bit more detail than we have in previous lessons. We're going to be looking at what's called the syntactic rules of the Python language. That's a fancy way of saying, how do I arrange the words so like the interpreter understands what I'm talking about? Is there a certain way that I have to use my spacebar and etc. and that type of thing? We're really explicitly going to be focusing on what's called a compound statement. That's our sort of our goal coming out of this lesson. Can you identify a compound statement, and can you write a compound statement, and even do some debugging on these compound statements? So, to begin with, let's look at like a really simple syntactic rule. Remember, syntax is the way that words are arranged, and this is a rule that maybe you've realized this, but it might make sense to you pretty quickly, is that the way that the Python interpreter reads your code is it reads it top to bottom. And that might make sense because like we read top to bottom, at least in the West. We start at line 1 and then we read sequentially down line 2, line 3, line 4, that sort of thing. We also read left to right. And I can prove that Python does this because I could hit run, and this program is printing this code in the order that I've typed it. Okay. Now it's doing a little bit more. It's also like what's called looping this code. We'll worry about that in another lesson. But it's reading it top to bottom. So that's what's called a syntactic rule. Now, another syntactic rule is the compound statement. So let's have a look at what this is. Now, you're going to get freaked out a little bit because I'm going to dump up a whole bunch of definitions and some crazy words, but I'm going to give you some examples. I'm going to break it down. So let's have a look. So a compound statement is I really should say, a block of code that controls the flow and execution of other code. It is made up of a header, which, let's keep this as a comment, which is a control piece of code, followed by a colon, and then an indented block of code, which is also called sweet. Whoa, lots of words. Sweet, indentation, compound statement. What's going on? Let's break it down. Let's look at indentation. Indentation, I think, is the easiest to understand, and it is also fundamentally the easiest way to sort of break your program. And I have some errors and stuff. So let's have a look. Indentation is a single press of the tab key or 4 presses of the space bar before a piece of code is written. Let's look at an example. Okay, so I could have a piece of code here. I could print hello, hello, and this code is not indented. It's just regular code. There's nothing fancy about it. It's not indented. However, on line 9, before I type my code, I'm going to hit the tab key, and on your keyboard, it's probably going to be on the far left. And I just have to hit it once, a single time. And boom, look at this. I've got this open space. I've got this indentation. And if I was to type, this hello is indented, what we would say is that this line of code has been indented. Why is it indented? Well, it's got this sort of space in front of it. Okay, and that's very, very important for Python. I cannot stress this enough. I will show you in a moment why that is important. But trust me when we say focus on the indentation. Very important. Now, I said you could do a tab key. You could also do a space. Okay, so if we start at the bottom or at the start, I go 1, 2, 3, 4 presses of the space bar, and this is also indented. Okay, it's up to you how you want to do it. Personally, like, I wouldn't press 4 spaces if I could just hit 1 key on the tab. Also, if you hit 3 spaces or 5, you could have problems. Okay, so I reckon the tab key is usually the best way to go about it. So that's indentation. Okay, we'll leave that there for the moment. Now, what is a header? Okay, a header is, this is probably not the correct definition, I'm just going to kind of make it up, is a control statement. It's a piece of code followed by, by a colon. And a colon is, if I hit shift and there's a button on my computer, it's right to the right of my L. If I hit that, I've got these two dots there. That's called a colon. Okay, and there's a whole range of what are called headers or control statements. So there could be like what's called a while true. There's an if. There's elif. For I in range. I think that's something. There's a whole bunch of them. It's not so important to memorize them. Like, we will use a few of these later down the track. Some of them we'll just completely ignore. But what do you notice about a header? How do we know it's a header? Well, it's a bunch of letters and words or whatever. You could have a space or whatever. But it's always followed by a colon. It has to be followed by a colon. If you don't have a colon at the end of a control statement, boom, you're going to get an error message. So it's very important that's there. Okay, let's use we'll stick with the if statement, I think. Okay, so if score equals 85. Okay, so this is our header, and we will just set up a variable score equals 85. All right. Oh yeah, and see, do you see how Python has like, it's got this like little red underline? It's like an error. It's like telling you, bro, you're missing your colon. So I've got to put a colon there. Okay, so that's our header. We've done indentation, header. We've still got to do compound statement and the sweet code. Let's look at the sweet code. Sweet code is the code that's indented after a control statement. So I'm at my control statement. If I hit enter, it automatically indents my code for me. And I could say print, you know what, if I've got this score of 85, what would that be? I guess that's a distinction. That's pretty sweet. Okay. And this code that is indented is called the sweet code. It is controlled by the header. All right. The last thing is, well, what's their compound statement? We're so close. The compound statement is this entire block of code. The compound statement is the header and the sweet code. It's the control statement. This is our control statement here, followed by the indented code that is controlled by it. Now we've got a comment there. The comment doesn't really matter. But these compound statements can be pretty big, or they can be really small. Like, you know, you could have, we could have like another print statement there, and I'll just get rid of this. We don't need to do that anymore. If I was to run this code, right, you know, is our score 85? It is. It says distinction, well done. Okay. And I could make another compound statement here. This is called an elif statement. We'll learn about if and elif another lesson. And what's 75? That would be very good. I don't know. Maybe like to improve, you need to revise your times tables. Okay, whatever. This is like a math test or something like that. So in this case, what we have is we've got two compound statements. We've got this one here, and we've got this compound statement here. Oh, let's make that a bit nicer. Okay. And again, like, how do I know this is a compound statement? Well, because I've got this control structure here. It's followed by it ends with a colon. So I know as soon as I see the colon, I know there has to be a compound statement. And then I've got this indented code that belongs there. Okay. So in this case, I've got two compound statements. You could have compound statements indented within other compound statements. They're very useful in that type of thing. Okay. So that's pretty sweet. The last thing to sort of finish up is debugging. Errors. Like, where can this go wrong? I said earlier that, you know, 4 presses of the spacebar or a single tab is very important. What happens if you just add another spacebar? Okay, what happens if you want to live dangerously? Let's put a single spacebar right here. Now, aesthetically, it is way off. Like, it does not line up. Does that really matter? Well, it does. If I was to run this, Python, the interpreter, is like, whoa, I can't deal with this, man. There's an indentation error. I don't know what to do. And it will tell us, okay, line 15, there's a problem. It said line 15, unindent does not match outer indentation error. There will be a range of indentation errors that can happen. And all it is to do is do these things line up. And if you stick with a single tab or 4 spaces, life will be pretty sweet. So if I was to remove that space, we're golden. All right. We could also change the score. I could do 75 and it'll change the stuff there. Okay. Yeah, so that's just something to watch out for. The moment you see indentation error, it'll tell you the line. You got to look at that area. First of all, is stuff even indented? Like, this is another one. Like, I could just do this, right? We can compare these two here. I'll need to make this 85 though. I've got a control statement, and then I'm going to follow with some code, and I'm not going to indent it. I'm going to be a bit cooked here. I run it, boom. It's like, I don't know what to do, man. Like, you haven't indented the code and the control structure. I don't know what to do. And it says indentation error, expected an indented block after if statement on line 12. And there'll always be something like this. Like, any of these statements, like, you could do a while true statement or anything like that. It'll be like, yeah, you did this statement, and I was expecting some code to be there that belongs to this block. Why didn't you do it, man? So you just got to fix that up. It's just something to watch out for. And it is, hands down, the most common error that you will face in your coding, like your coding career, or your coding journey, I should say. Indentation. Can't stress enough. If you stick with the rule of a single tab or 4 presses, life will be pretty sweet. That's it. All right. Peace out.